everybody. I hope you can hear me and that we can start already. If everybody is ready, my name is Mario Apostolov. I am going to moderate this session. I am the regional advisor on trade facilitation, but also on for the United Nations United Nations Special Program for the Economies of Central Asia, SPECA, and I will be happy to moderate this session. The session is on reestablishing connectivity after the pandemic in Central Asia. We all know that the pandemic has had a heavy toll on the economies of all countries of the world, but especially of the landlocked countries in Central Asia. The quarantine, the isolation due to the pandemic has had serious reflection on the economies of the region, and the economic shock was expected to be beyond anything that we have witnessed in the recent history. The national economies experienced a substantial decline of GDP last year, but this year the expectations of the IMF, for example, are not so gloomy, and growth is expected in most parts of the world, including in Central Asia. So let us see how increased connectivity can help. Many people think that the pandemic has even opened a window of opportunity, that we see better certain negative parts of procedures and processes in international trade that can be overcome by using best practice solutions, better standards for connectivity, and make Central Asia really central again in the center of this large Eurasian land. So I will stop with this, the introduction of the topic. We have a set of distinguished speakers who will be presenting this morning or evening or afternoon, depending where you are. So we have here Ms. Tatiana Ray-Bellet, who is a director for TIR and transit in the International Road Transport Union. We have Tamar Jejea Satterwald, Attorney Advisor International at the International Trade Law Development Program. We have Daniel Kroos from the OSCE, Max E, who is a consultant working on supply chain management from Singapore. We have Larisa Kislyakova, a trade and transport specialist from Tajikistan, who is now the chairperson of the Transport and Logistic Partnerships on Barriers and in Central Trade. And we have Mr. Vyacheslav Vikentiev, Deputy General Delegate to the International Roads Union Permanent Delegation to Eurasia. And at the end, myself, I already presented myself. So I am happy to move without much ado to some technical housekeeping notes that everybody should know. Like we have many participants in this session, so this event is recorded, please mind that. We have everyone muted in order not to disrupt the speakers. The panelists can take the floor, so please press the button when you want your microphone to be unmuted. Please keep it otherwise muted if you don't speak. Attendees are welcome to ask questions in the using the chat box, and if you have questions, please put them also in the question and answers section of the website. So I will bring these questions to the panelists at the end. For those who are joining now the forum, please note that there is interpretation. You can see the sign in the lower bar where you can press and switch to English and Russian at your will. What are the objectives of this session? We have to look at recent findings on factors impeding connectivity in the region, show successful strategies to cope with the COVID and highlight lessons learned. You know that COVID has caused problems to connectivity by new procedures for drivers who cross the borders. Goods are examined more carefully. In certain behind the border barriers which have emerged recently. So we are going to look at these things and look at possible solutions for better transit and transport connectivity, digitalization of information flows, which we have seen developing during the last years. So without much ado, I would like to invite the first speaker who on our list, who is Mrs. Tatiana Ray-Bellet. She is the director of Frontier and Transit at the IRU's Geneva headquarters. She has managed a range of projects, including leading countries through the TIR implementation process and making the system operational for customs authorities and business. Before joining the IRU, Ms. Ray-Bellet worked in the developing sector, managing health, sanitation, and environmental projects under the umbrella of the UNICEF. She held management positions in private education sector in Pakistan and at the marine equipment export firm in Russia. She has a master's degree in the Oriental Studies Institute from St. Petersburg University. So, Mr. Ray-Bellet, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mario. Good morning, good afternoon, dear participants. It is great to see you, although remotely, after a very long time. Thank you very much, Mario, for such a detailed introduction. Allow me to share my screen, my presentation. Okay, I hope you can see it now on your screen. Okay. IRU, as the World Transport Organization, tackles issues essential to connectivity, in particular by means of road transport, which is the cornerstone of regional and interregional economic cooperation and integration. But what hampers this integration are impediments to interregional transportation links, whether through hard or soft infrastructure issues. These trade and transport impediments result in unnecessarily high transportation costs and time spent getting goods to the market, which is often too late in case of perishables. And this reduces the country's ability to compete with global markets.
Dear Tatiana, can you just switch your slides to full screen, please?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Okay. Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah. What I want to underline is that connectivity is a cornerstone of regional cooperation and integration. It is so important to support the road industry, in particular in Central Asia, which consists of landlocked countries, in order to drive the economic recovery and to find new drivers for economic growth. I will not go to figures of how COVID impacted the road transportation industry. I think these figures are known too well. And what I want to underline here is that we need to find and to resolve, to find how to support the road transportation industry and how to resolve the obstacles which we have been observing, in particular at this time of the sanitary crisis. As we know well, Central Asia consists of landlocked countries, countries rich with natural resources, and also some of the fastest growing economies. So what these countries need is to facilitate their export and also to satisfy the growing demand in imports. So how this can be supported? Obviously through establishing better transportation links. Hard infrastructure is important for developing connectivity, but what's particularly even more important is soft infrastructure. What is needed for developing and supporting soft infrastructure is geopolitical cooperation, it's cross-border regulatory and policy coordination, it's efficient customs procedures, and strong public-private partnership. No surprise, all these boxes, to a great extent, can be tackled by international tools such as the tier convention, the tier system. RU has been managing the tier system and under UN mandate, we are managing the tier system. But in fact, the system was created in 1949, and the spirit of the system is to facilitate and secure international trade and transit. At the time of COVID sanitary crisis, it has become even more important to facilitate border crossing and to keep supply chains open for international deliveries. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed the vital contribution of tier and in particular digital tier to global trade, especially at the times of COVID-19, because tier as an international transit tool facilitates the flow of goods across borders without physical human contact. Of course, most of the participants know what tier is. I will underline the main is features. So the system is based on mutual recognition and trust and on major security elements related to load compartments, importantly to transport operators who operate the system, who are admitted by their customs authorities. And of course, it is supported by digital tools because all events which are reflected in paper tier carnets are also reflected in the same way in digital tools which are integrated in the custom systems. I'm happy to say that this year we have reached an important milestone to the development of tier, which was a new annex to the tier convention, which is Annex 11, which is the legal basis for e-tier. This annex entered into force in May this year. The process, of course, is not fast, and but I'm happy to say that Central Asian countries are championing the process of tier digitalization, not only in the region, but in the world. I will not go to the benefits of digital tier. I think they are obvious. Of course, the benefits of tier, which the system already gives, are even further reinforced thanks to the digitalization of procedure. Transport operators don't need to go anymore to the company office to take paper tier carnets. Importantly, they don't need to fill out the tier carnet. They can do everything online to fill out the declaration and the guarantee and to send it simultaneously to the customs authorities of all countries. When they come to the border, they don't need to show and handle together with customs officers the paper tier carnet. Everything is done electronically. So at the time of COVID, the quick transition to digital tier to e-tier is particularly important. On this slide, I will share some positive statistics which we can see in the use of tier in the region. And when I saw these figures, because we all knew about how tier is growing in Uzbekistan, but even for me, it was surprising to see very positive figures in Kazakhstan and Tajikistan with the growth in the use of tier this year, as you can see on the slide. Another positive news is that, as I said, these countries in the region are leading the digitalization of the tier system, taking the first steps towards the final implementation of e-tier international system. Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan launched digital pilots in November last year along the bilateral corridor between them. Tajikistan joined this project this year in May, And let me explain you how they do this. They use the existing tier IT tools, which the customs authorities already have in their systems. And based on these tools, most of you know what TRPD is. Based on this existing tier IT tools, which ensure business to customs and customs to business connectivity, these countries already started testing digitalization elements, digital elements of tier. So on this basis, countries will be able to faster transition to e-tier international system, which is hosted by UNEC. And most of the countries, notably these four countries which you can see highlighted in dark blue, they have already undertaken the first steps in order to start interconnectivity between the customs systems and the system of UNEC, e-tier international system. So here you can see the first operations which have been launched in order to connect these countries by means of digital tier based on the existing instruments. Kyrgyzstan is preparing to also join the project in October. And I'm really happy about the collective effort of everyone in order to make this happen, and in particularly development partners such as CLDP. Tamar is here, and we are very grateful for the support of CLDP, GIZ, as well as other development partners in the region, such as USAID, ADB, as well as intergovernmental platforms such as Turkic Council and Trasika. But at the same time, if further facilitation is not made, then it makes no sense then to undertake all the efforts which I mentioned above. And what I want to underline here is a combination of hard and soft infrastructure in the form of green lanes for secure digital transport. Of course, when the declaration is sent in a digital form in advance and the assessment risk analysis has been made also in advance, then such secure transport can go in a facilitated way through a dedicated green lane. So finally, I want to underline how important it is to coordinate cross-border issues at global and regional level. It's important to quickly move towards digitalization of transport documents and procedures, and to use best practices and global standards to solve other border crossing issues. So this particular photograph was taken from a border crossing between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. It's Yalama-Konezbaeva border crossing, where this green lane has been launched. I also know that Uzbekistan and Tajikistan are preparing also for implementing a green lane, facilitated lane between at the border between these two countries. And in fact, this is not something new. The practice of green lanes in the region was started by Kazakhstan already in 2019 to facilitate movements between China and Kazakhstan. But at that time, that border is practically it has a lot of restrictions. So that's why we really welcome this example set by Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan at that border crossing, and we hope that this practice will spread across the rest of the region. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be ready for your questions.
Many thanks, Mr. Esbelet. Very good timing also. I invite all the speakers to keep to that. And thanks, we are going to come back to the discussion, in the discussion to the issues that you raised. I would like to invite now the second speaker, Tamar Jejeya Satterwhite, who is an attorney advisor with the Commercial Law Development Program of the US Department of Commerce. Prior to that, she has worked in the global trade and policy practice of a law firm in Washington, D.C., where she focused on import and export controls, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, ruling requests, and other areas of international trade law. She has also served as an attorney advisor at the U.S. Department of Commerce, and she has received her Juris Doctorate from the George Washington University Law School, and her undergraduate degree, magna cum laude, from the International Studies from Austin College. Thank you very much. And Tamar, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mario. Greetings, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the organizers for this opportunity. I'm Tamar Satterwhite. I am an attorney advisor, international. I work at the U.S. Department of Commerce's Commercial Law Development Program. The acronym is CLDP. I just wanted to briefly go over what CLDP does and what we are, and then dive into more details with respect to our fruitful collaboration with the IRU with regards to the broader implementation of the TIER Convention, specifically with the digitalization efforts in Central Asia. So briefly about CLDP, I don't have slides up, but I'm also happy to share them with you if anybody requests. But today I'll just be speaking with you. So, yes, CLDP is as I mentioned, is a commercial law development program, and it is actually the technical assistance arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and we are within the U.S. Department of Commerce's Office of the General Counsel. We have attorney advisors and national program specialists. CLDP was created in 1992, initially to help the Soviet countries to transition to market economies. However, today CLDP covers a wide range of regions and countries and has truly a global reach. We provide technical assistance in the commercial law sphere, and it's government to government assistance, as well as private sector assistance with transitional countries to support their economic development goals. Our projects seek mainly to align those countries' rules and procedures with international best practices to create an attractive business environment for US businesses overseas, as well as for international businesses. I forgot to mention, but I work within CLDP with the Central Asia team. So I want to go over a little bit about our team and what the Central Asia portfolio looks like. So as part of the US government's technical assistance to Central Asia, CLDP was tasked by the US Department of State to assist in improving trade and transit connectivity between all 5 Central Asian countries, as well as between Central Asia and other countries and regions in the world. And with this respect, CLDP's work in Central Asia furthers the goals of the US Central Asia Trade and Investment Framework Agreement, US TIFA, as well as the C5+1 platform goals. The way that we are organized, we have regionally focused work, which consists of regional working groups that cover key trade issues, including customs, sanitary phytosanitary measures, standards and technical barriers to trade, working group on intellectual property rights, as well as private sector focused working group on women's economic empowerment, and the newly launched working group on digital trade. We also work bilaterally with several countries, including with the Kyrgyz Republic and Tajikistan. Projects there involve government procurement related reforms. And then in Uzbekistan, we have projects involving the capital markets development. And the objective of these expert level working groups are to mainly examine and recommend best practices for facilitating trade, including improving efficiency of and predictability of customs procedures and border crossings. And it's mainly to these are the customs working group that I lead is government to government expert level working group. And we try to bring the government officials together from all 5 Central Asian countries to discuss the developments in customs related issues, also to brainstorm some of the challenges that they face, and then the outcome of these meetings is usually a set of recommendations, actionable recommendations that they can implement. But I'll go into that a little bit later. So yeah, so the customs working group, as I mentioned, it is actually in 2020, CLDP was tasked by the U.S. Department of State to assist regionally in each country and between Central Asia and other countries, specifically with the broader implementation of the TIER Convention, including the digitalization efforts in Central Asia. And this, during COVID pandemic, the digital aspects of the TIER Convention and its effects have actually been highlight the benefits of and the greater need for such broader implementation of the TIER Convention. As Tatiana mentioned, there are many benefits to the digital TIER system, especially during COVID. And in June of 2020, we started cooperating very closely with the IRU, the International Road Transport Union, which, as Tatiana mentioned, administers the UN registered TIER Convention. And we've been working very closely with the IRU experts to facilitate the broader implementation of the TIER Convention in and between the countries of Central Asia. Initially, we began to identify gaps in the implementation of the convention in each country, and most of those gaps identified concern the digital TIER implementation and the capabilities of the customs officers to implement the TIER-related procedures. So the first steps we did with working with the IRU, as I mentioned, we started identifying gaps, and initially the lack of TIER-related materials, the availability of the TIER-related materials in the native Central Asian national languages was one of the obstacles that was identified for broader implementation. And as a threshold matter, CLDP, in collaboration with the IRU, started to translate the TIER-related materials, such as the TIER Convention, the new Annex 11, the TIER Handbook, as well as the distance learning modules into all 5 Central Asian languages. And now these resources are readily available online. And we've actually also been able to deliver these materials in person to the national associations in each country, and as well as the customs administrations in individual countries. And like I said, we've had a fruitful cooperation with the IRU. We started working initially with the TIER implementation and digitalization in Tajikistan in May and April of this year, 2021, in collaboration with the IRU, as well as the Tajik Association of Road Transport Operators, ABAT. We've facilitated hands-on trainings for customs officials in Tajikistan on the correct implementation of digital TIER-related processes. And then after that, those trainings, that Tajikistan, as Tatiana mentioned, was able to join the ongoing regional digital TIER pilot project, which was initiated by Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. And Tajikistan successfully made its shipments through Uzbekistan to Kazakhstan, relying solely on digital TIER functionalities. So that was a great success and a progress. And in addition to that, we've also supported other hands-on trainings for customs officials in Tajikistan, especially at the border crossing points between at the Tajik Uzbek, Tajik Afghan, Tajik China, and Tajik Kyrgyz border crossing, priority border crossing points. And our CLDPs continues to collaborate with the IRU, and I can go through some of the future collaborations that we plan with the IRU. So we continue to support the successful implementation of tier digitalization projects in Central Asian countries and facilitation of the expansion of the digital tier solutions in the region, including the ongoing digital tier pilot project, as I mentioned. We'll also continue to facilitate the trainings of customs officials and other relevant government officials using the translated tier materials to improve their skills in digital tier solutions. And we'll facilitate the establishment of green lanes, again, as Tatiana had mentioned. Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, I believe, are considering the establishment of green lanes, and with the lack of infrastructure, there's also possibility to implement green windows before the establishment of actual lanes. So we'll coordinating closely with the RU to help countries establish green lanes. And also we're ready to support the country's efforts connecting their national customs systems to the E-tier international system in accordance with the E-tier specifications consistent with the new Annex 11 to the tier convention. And lastly, I just wanted to highlight that we've had a great, very productive, although virtual, the Cldp facilitated customs working group meeting just a couple of days ago in September, at the end of September. It was obviously with the collaboration of our RU experts. We also had invited the UNCTAD IC-CUDA experts to talk about the E-tier, UNCTAD E-tier project. And the working group actually brought together over 30 government officials from all four Central Asian countries minus Turkmenistan, and the all 5 National Association representatives, tier National Association representatives, private sector representatives were present at the Cldp's customs working group meeting in September. And it was a productive meeting because the delegates developed and adopted 10 set of recommendations, actionable recommendations with respect to the broader implementation of the tier convention in individual countries and among the countries in Central Asia. And they've also examined the specific concerns and recommendations with respect to the IC-CUDA projects in the region. And this working group that we facilitate provides a great opportunity and a forum for these countries to come together, the expert level government officials to come together, and it's a great forum for them to examine the progress made in the region, exchange ideas, and develop recommendations, ways forward to improve regional trade, connectivity, and collaboration. We plan to host the next meeting in 2022 to examine the progress of implementation of the adapted recommendations, and hope to continue collaboration with the IRU. I think my time is up, so I'll end it at this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your statement. And without much ado, we are going to move to the next speaker, who is Mr. Daniel Kroos, a senior program officer for the energy sector in the OSCE Secretariat in Vienna. He has more than 15 years of experience of managing substantial projects in the Caspian Sea region and Central Asia in the spheres of oil and gas investment, renewables, and trade connectivity for private companies and international organizations. So please, Mr. Kroos, the floor is yours.
Hear me? Okay.
Yes,
now you
yes.
can hear me. Okay, Mario, good
Please,
morning, and thank you, everyone. And I hope that you can see my presentation at the moment on the screen.
Yes,
Can you
we can
please
see
confirm?
it. Yes, we can
Excellent.
see it. Please try to stick to
Okay,
the timeline. Thanks.
sure, no problem. So my name is Daniel Cruz, and I am the Senior Program Officer of Energy Security at the OECD in Vienna. And I'm also running our flagship project on connectivity in the region. And I just want to tell you a little story on how this project came about. Countries on the Caspian Sea region that are participating states to the OECD approached us to see how they can actually boost their trade flows through their ports and also through their dry ports. And together with them, and I'll switch to the next slide here, yes, we developed a substantial project, multi-year, that has several work streams because we said, well, first of all, let's look at how we can introduce sustainability and the reduction of CO2 footprint and renewables into these logistics operations. Secondly, and that's the focus of today, let's look at connectivity aspects. And then thirdly, we also have, of course, a work stream that promotes equal opportunities for women in that sector. But I want to go to connectivity and quickly just give you an overlook on how we see connectivity in terms of definitions. So we're looking at the unhindered flow of goods, services, and goods and people, and it has for us three essential dimensions: infrastructure, standards, and collaboration. And this is exactly what our project looks at. And here you see at the start, we did a substantial mapping exercise of all of the different transport and connectivity initiatives that we have currently in the region. Many of them are around since many, many years. Well, status quo, we still believe, is that this route has not lived up to its full potential. It has much more to offer than is currently utilized. It has been seeing growth rates, high growth rates, and we did a whole economic modeling exercise with some raw data that was provided to us from the ports, which is very hard to come by, but I think all signs point to a substantial increase, especially of container goods by train traveling from Asia to Europe. But we also saw, of course, and other speakers have pointed this out, that the complication of the intermodal route combined with what we would call multi-country, multi-risk transport needs to be further facilitated. So the connectivity goals for us on this route, we formulated as to lower the time of transit, to increase the security and reliability and commercial viability of this route. And this is something that I want to get to soon, because we believe that you can only really see substantial increases of volumes if you get the private sector to understand that this can be a commercially even more viable route. And for that, we did a substantial survey with logistics service providers in Europe to see how they see actually the route at the moment and what they would like to see in terms of improvement. And because commodities is one thing, cars is one thing, but eventually you would like to see, of course, from the perspective of regional economies, to see some additional value chain added transports where you have basic manufacturing you can do in some of the logistics centers, etc. So the car industry, for instance, we talked to Volkswagen and BMW and all of these, and to see what it would take for them. And they all identified the same things. They said we would like, well, we see current issues with the reliability of transport, scheduling, customs clearance, timelessness, velocity, and we'd really like to see price transparency, open booking systems, more regularity, and of course, a seamless digitized documentation process flow. And that, I believe, links well into a really regional trend in terms of digitizing supply chains. We've heard from TIR, but of course, there are many more pieces to this puzzle. And we can see in Central Asia and the Caspian Sea region up all the way to Georgia and Romania, very different degrees of this type of logistics chain that is digitized. Some only have operating systems at terminals. We have some port community systems. But what is really missing at the moment is, and that's something we're also developing further in cooperation with the World Bank, is a platform that really can connect all of these different elements. So we would call this a platform agnostic platform that works through APIs to connect all of these different data sets. And the fantastic work that you are doing, Mario and others, on the harmonization of this data. Well, this data needs to be populated into a technical backbone. And I think that is one of the main challenges that the region will be facing for the coming years in order to really arrive at what we call a common digital platform that everyone can connect to. And so we've been looking at this problem with our different working groups that we have on this subject, and it's very comprehensive. We have over 40 different industry and business players and associations from the countries involved. And the more we look into the problem, the more we have arrived at the conviction that this needs to be built modular, because we believe there will not be one global purchasing decision by one government to build the platform of platforms, but rather we should focus on little pieces that we can start to incrementally digitize, and then eventually in a couple of years arrive at a system that will allow the depth that we need in order to have full functionality. So here, number one, you can see at the moment we're working at facilitating the first digitally handled cargo transport across the Caspian. This will work through an XML format, but that's a great start if that can happen. We're confident that we can do it this year, but maybe early next year. And then we would move on further. Just to give you an idea of what we can offer within the project to project participants. So we are involved in prototyping on a commercial white label platform for users. We can help with the digital readiness assessments for the different providers to understand what needs to be done for them to connect to such a platform in the future. We can offer a well-established network of leading experts in logistics and trade. And of course, we have a huge component on the sustainability aspect, which is a mega trend and which is becoming a force of competitiveness also in the region. Working, for instance, with the Port of Actau now to establish the first green port certificate on that side of the Caspian Sea, and many other more topics. And we're very happy to interested party to talk to them. And on the platform, as I mentioned, we have done an in-depth analysis that looked at the different operational setups and digital architecture solutions that could be feasible. I'm not going to get into this. Just very briefly, as a governance model, we would recommend a public-private partnership that leaves the government in charge also of the data, but that will be operated through a private entity, because we know governments are usually not good managers. So that would unite the best of both worlds. And I have very little time here, but I'd like to stress that it's essential that we have all parties involved in order to the platform to live to its full potential, and also to have it end to end. So it really needs to be from the west of China all the way up to Black Seaports in Romania to live up to its full capacity. Finally, to get back to the COVID point, we think this approach can have tremendous benefits to make supply chains more sustainable and secure for the coming years. And it's a mega challenge. And we're very happy to anyone who is interested to join us, to talk to us, to discuss, to be a part of this effort, because we really believe it's essential to build that what we call the green route community in that region, So thank you very much for the opportunity for this very brief presentation. 9 minutes and 30 minutes, Mario, and 30 seconds, Mario. You should be happy, right?
Thank you very much. Yes, well, we have many speakers. These are very interesting presentations, but we have to move because time is limited. So many thanks for this presentation, and I'm looking forward to cooperation with you as you are calling, because, well, I'll mention this at the end of this session. We are working on multimodal transport data and document harmonization exchange, and I personally work in Central Asia for that as well. Thank you very much, Daniel. And sorry for the timing. We have to move to the next speaker, Mr. Max Yi, who is a transport and logistics consultant based in Singapore. He has experience in working in supply chain management, international trade facilitation, and cross-border logistics. He holds a Master of Science in Logistics, graduate diploma in system analysis, and a Bachelor of Business Administration, awarded from the National University of Singapore and Nanyang Technological University. Thank you very much, and please, Mr. Yi.
Thank you, Mario. Good day to all the participants. Today, my topic actually follows very closely from Daniel, right? It's about discussing the Caspian Seaport competitiveness, this Caspian region, which has attracted a lot of attention recently. So this project is actually sponsored and commissioned by USAID, supported by the Competitiveness Jobs, Trade and Jobs CTJ project in Central Asia. So my role, I work with a team of consultants over there, including Miss Larissa, right, one of the panelists later. And together we actually have done quite a bit of data collection to kind of size up the issues, and we come up with some recommendations. So a very quick background about this project is that the data collection consisted of 5 actual commercial shipment samples across the Black Sea, Caucasus, and the Central Asia region that goes to either Kurik or Turmanbashi. And we also have some samples that are pure overland that goes to Russia. So bidirectional in both directions. So for this route, what we covered in terms of geography is that we have identified 3 main routes. One is the Trans-Kurik route, right, and goes through Kazakhstan. And normally this is used by Kazakh shippers from Tajikistan as well, Uzbekistan. And they will go through these border points that's mentioned. So that's our route 1. Route 2 is the Trans-Turmanbashi, right? That's typically used by Turkmenistan shippers and sometimes Afghanistan shippers as well. So they will go through Turmanbashi, cross the Caucasus, goes into Turkey. Very similar to Route 1, right? And typically they will enter Turkey by SAPI, BCP, border crossing point. The other route is a purely overland route that goes to Russia, right? So it's actually a roundabout way. That's approximately an additional of 450 kilometers compared to the Trans-Caspian route, right, between Central Asia and Caucasus. So it goes through on top the tip of the Caspian Sea, right, and enters Russia, goes into Georgia, and then Turkey. So what our study did was that we did a data collection in July and August. We did the analysis in September, right, and we like to report our findings. Basically, based on the, I would say, relatively small sample size because of the time constraint, we have conducted using inferential statistics, right, 2 sample t-tests, and below our hypothesis testing with a p-value of 0.05, so 95% confidence interval. Basically, our quick inferences contain that the Kurik route is actually costlier than the overland route, right, 3 times as much. And this kind of validated our common feedback received that transport operators are actually mainly prefer to go through the overland route, Route 3, because of the high cost of using Caspian Sea. However, the Kurik route is actually faster than the overland route, right, 1.35 times, right? And we measured this because our samples have different distances. So we actually measure in terms of kilometers per hour. Number 3, the total cost is actually costlier in terms of the Black Sea to Central Asia direction, right, rather than the other way around. So when we measure costs, we actually use per ton kilometer. This is a usual common metric. And The reason for this is because there's a lot more volume of goods moving from Black Sea to Central Asia rather than the other direction. So for transport operators, they will try to lower the fee on the return leg so that they can avoid avoiding the problem of return empty backhaul. 4, there's no significant difference in the speed in terms of either direction, Black Sea to Central Asia or vice versa. More or less, the speed is about the same. And also, interestingly, we find that Kurik or Tomabashi route, basically, there's no significant difference in terms of the cost for either seaport route. I think there are some very good developments supporting the Caspian Sea ports, right? One is actually the Volga-Don Canal that allows the Caspian Sea port to connect to the Azov Sea and then enters the Black Sea region. So that avoids the problem of transloading between vehicles or trains into vessels. Right? And the other very positive matter is the Belt and Road Initiative. We have actually 6 main corridors. 2 of them goes through the northern and southern tip of the Caspian Sea. But interestingly, you can see that the corridors do not really traverse across the Caspian Sea, right? Maybe one of the reasons is because of the the so-called high perceived cost of the shipment. So these are some of the main numbers that we have gotten from the study. Approximately, you can see Baku to Kurik and Baku to Tomabashi in either directions. What is the approximate time and the cost? Very interestingly, we have also discovered that despite the year 2020 being COVID-19 affected, supply chains were disrupted, right? But in the Black Sea region, Baku International Trade Seaport did not actually report any deterioration, right, in terms of the freight handle. We are excluding passenger traffic, so this is only purely freight, right? And in fact, between the year 2019 to 2020, the freight throughput has actually increased by 20%, right? And in terms of the TEUs, or the 20 equivalent units, the 20-foot containers handled, the number has actually increased by 15%, right, year on year. So despite these challenges, I think this could be attributed to many factors, like, for example, the strong supportive action of the Azerbaijan government, right? And also the seaport itself that maintains operations despite the closures of many land border terminals. What I like to focus a little bit is about the recommendations over here. So based on what we can see, right, we actually had 2 main conclusions. One is that for the Caspian Sea port region to be competitive, the prices have to actually be more optimal to attract more transit traffic. And the second is that based on our analysis on the throughput and the tonnage handle, actually we concluded that when we have a demand side problem and a supply side problem, it is not the supply side problem, because most of the seaports, Kurik, Tomabashi, and Baku, they are actually running at less than 50% utilization, right? Like, for example, Baku, in the next few years, it can actually upgrade it to about currently 5 times as much as the current container throughput capacity. So the problem is actually more on the demand side. How do we actually attract traffic, right, into the Caspian Sea? And here we have a list that we like to recommend, like, for example, the piggyback on return backhaul. If a transport operator from Tajikistan, for example, that try to send goods from Dushanbe to Istanbul, it may be very expensive for it to organize by itself. But if it can ride on, let's say, collaboration with Turkish operators, right, that can actually effectively enjoy significant price savings. Another one is to set up consolidation centers. And we see that the volumes from, let's say, Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan are typically small. So if they can enjoy some collaboration and use the consolidation centers in Uzbekistan. Now, of course, the site has to be further studied, like whether it's going to be in Tashkent or Samarkand, Bukhara, or some border points. That has to be further studied. But such consolidation and increase the volume and also increase the load factor and reduce the price per ton. Attracting the transit traffic is pretty important as well. And I think this is the main driver of growth. Let me give you one example. Now, the Chinese, for example, they have a lot of shipments to Caspian region across Central Asia as well. But the cost is also high because what they have is that they send a load from, let's say, Xi'an in China to Baku, right? But they price in the cost of a 40-foot container. they do not want the container to go back to China because it will be empty, or they also have to pay for detention and demurrage charges. So for shipment cost for China to Baku, it could be about 5,000 US dollars. Actually, half of it is the pay for the price of a 40-foot container, right? And this means that there should be some economic policies, right, to actually increase the export output from the region, so that it's not only imports coming in full loaded, but also Central Asia is able to export goods out. Right? In terms of the time factors, right, for the seaports, basically, I think Daniel has also covered some of these points, like how to reduce the port dwell time. We saw that the port dwell time in the seaports like Baku, Kurik, could be quite significant. One of the reasons is because of the adverse weather patterns in the Caspian, and ships can be delayed for many hours, right? The other one is to modernize the feed vessel. That will reduce the operating costs. And I think we can also try to promote containerization, which is one of the national initiatives by the government of the Republic of Kazakhstan, especially for time-sensitive cargoes. Right? This fits well because for the short time, there's no way where the Caspian Sea can compete effectively on par in terms of cost with the overland route. But if the market segment is targeting those more price insensitive segment, but more time sensitive people, like for example, shipping high value perishables, chemicals, food, and processed food, that could actually help to attract more transit volume. And so basically, we do feel confident, right, about the Caspian Seaport, right? Because now international ocean freight, most of you know, has actually gone up 7 to 8 times, right, from the pre-COVID-19 levels. So Shanghai to Europe seaports now would cost more than 13,000 US dollars. I think there will be a lot of attraction of the shippers into the Caspian, right, using such inland routes, right, and therefore the future is actually pretty positive. So on that note, I'd like to conclude my presentation, and I welcome any questions thereafter. Thank you very much, and back to you, Mario.
Thank you very much, Max. It's very good, very interesting, but we have to move on. And now and we will have a discussion, I hope, at the end, if time is left. Now I would like to move to Ms. Larisa Kislakova, who is an expert in trade, transport, and transit services. She's the chairperson of the Central Asia Transport and Logistic Partnership. She used to be the Vice Minister of Economic Development and Trade of Tajikistan. She also used to be the chair of our trade working group of the SPECA program. And she is going to make her presentation now. Please, Larisa, пожалуйста, Larisa.
Да, спасибо большое. Добрый день, уважаемые
Thank you very much. Good morning, dear colleagues. Can you hear me? Yes, of course. Thank you. I'm really pleased to see all of you. Yesterday night, I came back from Almaty, where we had an offline broadcasting of our session on simplification of trade and transit procedures, new and innovative approaches. We had a very interesting session, and we were discussing the studies that were conducted. One of the studies that was conducted by the private sector, they were monitoring lines and corridors. And the second research that was conducted by ITC on experts of some basic types of goods from the Central Asian countries. What's interesting, dear colleagues, is the private sector is conducting analysis without any methodology, and we're preparing checklists, and drivers, as they transport goods, they check time, they indicate time, waiting time, stops, and formal payments, how much time any procedure takes. A procedure takes infrastructure, border crossing points. And because we did the study every year, so it's the third time that we've had it, we tried to choose similar products. And this time it was plums, and all the cars were actually going through those same border crossings to see some dynamics. It's a very interesting fact that finally this year, the countries have agreed, and that's the interaction between different agencies that resulted in it, in abolishment of tests at border crossings, tests for COVID-19, and These tests are recognized throughout this region. The only country is Uzbekistan that still requires drivers to be tested for COVID-19 at the border. But these are express tests, rapid tests that take 20 minutes to return results. And our drivers save 2 or 3 days in transit relative to the last year, um, because there's save time and waiting time at border crossing. So what are the main problems? Lines, queues, basically, because today the queues have a tendency, a downward trend, relative to previous years. The infrastructure of border crossings is still in poor shape. But it was nice to hear today from Tatiana that the Kanisbai-Yalamad border crossing between Uzbekistan and Alamad, a physical green lane was allocated uh, for people, for drivers with E-tiers or other permits. When we talk about green lines and green corridors, even though all the countries have always been talking about those green lanes, but there's no physical lane, no hypothetical green corridor is going to work. The reason for that is that vehicles are so tightly and jammed in lines, and even somebody is allowed to go through the green lane physically, it's not going to pass. And we were witnesses to the fact, to a situation where we were going through the border crossing in Uzbekistan, and our customs officers were ready to let us go, but they told us, go to the all the vehicles standing ahead of you, asking them if they're going to let you go. So unless we have a physical green lane, for perishable goods primarily, it would be very difficult for them to go quickly. When we do restructuring, there is a restructuring of border crossings. For example, Kanisbai, there was a possibility to allocate and dedicate a green lane, but a lot of border crossings that have been around for years, physically it may not be feasible. That's one issue. Another issue, which a lot of drivers are talking about and transporters are talking about, is availability of the inspection facilities at border crossings, specifically X-ray scanners. And quite often the scanners are there, but the vehicles are still manually searched. The reason for that, what was the reason? The main reason is power outage, something doesn't work, and then it's physical inspection that takes a lot of time. Another good uh, uh, finding is that even during those years, perishable goods were inspected. And this year, there's no inspection of perishable goods. It's not in our region, it's the Kazakhstani-Russian border, where Russian customs officers ask to do the technological drive-through, regardless of the type of freight. So they take out all the freight, and drivers do it most of the time, and it's really difficult to find carriers there. So there's a violation of the cold chain requirement, and the cars are there, the trucks are there for a long time for this physical inspection. So issues like that exist at border crossings, and this is very important. A very good platform, we're saying the PPP, public-private partnership or dialogue, it is needed because all the problems that are raised by the private sector should be dealt with, should be tackled, should be promoted at some platform. And these platforms could be presented by national trade support committees. And with the support of GIZ, we created so-called regional meetings of such committees where we can bring up these issues and tackle these issues at the regional level. We have a big problem on access to information. Getting relevant information is very difficult. There are a lot of different websites, and the driver has to go to different websites to get this information about a certain border crossing, whether it's operating, whether it's been shut down, what the infrastructure is like, what's the time limit for or time frame for inspection of different agencies, and by different agencies. Quite often there is a problem that at the border crossings there are no guidelines or instructions of each inspecting agency, because customs authorities are all quite often asking for prescription or assignment order for drivers or something like that, and the driver doesn't have that. They would be asking for some informal payments or bribes, or they would be set aside until you bring us or you have these copies of documents sent to us. When drivers know what each agency is inspecting, that would be easy. That is much easier. And when knowing the time frame that each procedure takes, for example, as in Uzbekistan, each inspection has a certain time frame. Then these corruption elements can be avoided, because you can see that if a car is there held there for more than 15 minutes at phytosanitary inspection, there's something wrong, and uh, these issues should be uh, tackled with together and jointly. As for transportation companies, this is what Max was talking about. We had a meeting in Tashkent at the terminal with a lot of Turkish transportation companies, and they said that the best border is the Georgian border. They had a record of crossing the border cross in 2 minutes. It took them only 2 minutes, and we can only dream about that, because there were no controlling agencies at the border crossing there. So the vehicles just go through, and everything else happens at the pre-border terminals. And then yesterday during the session, we discussed the issue about competitiveness of the region, of our region, and drivers in the region, that the fleet is obsolete, and there are no privileges for transportation companies to upgrade upgrade their fleet, to introduce some advantages, benefits, etc., to bring new cars. According to Kazakhstan, this information, 70% of their fleet is already obsolete. When we export perishable goods, and you know that most of our countries export perishable agricultural produce, we lack refrigerator trucks, because some of the old trucks cannot be used anymore. But all these issues comprehensively we're trying to deal with those, but just the private sector is not going to be able to deal with those issues. So I'm calling upon all the international organizations that are attending this conference, who are working in digitalization, who are already helping our countries, to please uh, uh, stay in touch with our government, so that we could actually eliminate these barriers together and jointly. Issues of digitalization, if we look at those, for example, road permits or transit permits, I hope you know what I'm talking about. This is a permit system between countries. Quite often, there's a deficit of paper-based permits. So it's time for us to switch to electronic permits and transit permits. So there are a lot of issues: electronic lines, electronic queues, and Kazakhstan's using them at certain border crossings. And we have to create a transit lane for express produce for Central Asian countries, so that we could actually introduce EQs and digitalization and green lane, and just use one border crossing as a pilot to see how all ratified agreements are implemented there in accordance with all the international norms. So this is the main thing that I wanted to say, because the time is pressing. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that we will continue working together in the future. Thank you, Larissa. We are working together with you on a number of research that we're conducting in the region, and on the subject that you brought up in your presentation. And we plan to have another information session on digitalization of lanes and corridors. We're very short in time, but I'd like to move on to the next presenter, Mr. Vyacheslav Vikentiev.
IRU permanent delegation to Eurasia, based in Moscow. He deals with key IRU activities in the region with the focus on tier, border crossing facilitation, and streamlined customs procedures. He has experience as a customs officer and with the private sector. So, Mr. Vikentiev, please.
Добрый день, большое спасибо.
Good morning, and thank you very much. Can you see my presentation? Yes, we can. Great. So my presentation is going to be brief, and I hope that we will catch up with the timing of our session. I am representing IRU, like Tatiana, who was presenting before me. But despite the possibility, despite anything, I'm going to talk about not MDP, but about a different project, which is, even though it's branched out from our main product, but it has become an independent product or project, and its demand demand for it has been confirmed by quick engagement of businesses into this project. This product has become as an offspring of the pandemic, or as a result of the pandemic, or the pandemic facilitated, expedited its emergence. And prior to COVID, we had different participants of the supply chains talking to us, asking us to help find reliable agents, counter agents, located in other parts of the world who would be a partner in transportation or assist in freight registration or provide a comprehensive service at a certain section of the route. Initially, we process these requests manually by tying different partners in different sectors and from different geographic regions. And in essence, we were using our hands to build up new logistic lines, chains, by connecting new markets and supporting all participants of this transition or freight forwarding. But that could not stay a permanent solution. So at some point in time, we looked at our product, MDP, and we've been talking about it being digital and because it was developed due to different applications, and all of them are responsible for different aspects of tier and EDP. And because of the electronic messaging exchange between different players, we provide additional reliability and transparency. So we looked at the EDP and we looked at it being already digital, or TIR being already digital. We decided to facilitate the search of reliable partners in the throughout the logistic supply chain through by means of automating the existing chain and by developing the application software. So we took the tier EPD existing application that helps transporters supply preliminary information electronically to customs authorities throughout their route. We upgraded this. We updated this application by including business connections section into it, or segments into it, and we were able to connect other players, not just transporters, but also expeditors, brokers, warehouses, exporters, importers. So the whole process, transportation process, from the beginning in preparation and organization and freight delivery at their destination, can be implemented using this one tool. And Max was talking about interaction between the Tajik operators, Turkish warehouses, and this is an example of how this business connection application can be used in cases like that. Today, the business connections module is in the test phase, but its use now gives a lot of benefits to the businesses. For example, if we talk about transporters, for transporters of tier transporters, particularly for small and medium businesses, this is a business opportunity because they're actively represented and visible for other players of the market, that are using this tier EPD application. Another benefit is a possibility to work together with other transporters that allow them to overcome different barriers and limitations instituted particularly or introduced as a result of COVID as well. And the third aspect or benefit is the possibility to get help and support from reliable partners where they need it. And if we talk about logistics operators, and we can list the following benefits. That's the possibility to get in touch with experienced tier transporters, a possibility to provide services using the platform through their own account, simplification of the organization of complex transportations from door-to-door deliveries, which connect different regions of the world, with the possibility for everyone engaged to stay in touch, and supplying the declarations through tier EPD system. And this is a possibility to track the movement of your freight at each step of the way, which reduces risks for all the participants. Today, almost 1,000 transport operators have been registered in the business connection module. We developed accounts for reliable, trusted third parties, and we're training participants for pilot transportations. And we are analyzing criteria that this trusted third parties have to adhere to for us to be able to give them the right to use this module. And on top of that, we're collecting feedback from the first participants, primary participants, and reliable third parties to fine tune this application to make it more effective in terms of satisfying market requirements. To get access to business connections, Everything's shown here. All transportation operators that use tier EPD can make their profile active for business connections in order to get in touch with their national association. Other interested parties or stakeholders can get a hold of us by emailing us this email that we show on the slide. If there are any additional questions, particularly on the technical aspects of the module, then we will work together with you to clarify all the issues and tell you how you can get all the benefits from the use of this product. This is it for me. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Vyacheslav. That was a very interesting presentation. And thank you for sticking to your time. And we will have a session. I just received the confirmation that we will have a small section. We'll have more time for discussion. I was invited from the very start, from the very beginning, as to make a presentation, and then it happened so that I was supposed to make this presentation, and I was supposed to make a presentation, but then I was nominated to be a moderator of this session. So I'm gonna try and share my presentation with you. I hope you can see it.
Да, спасибо.
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. So we'll try to. I will be speaking in Russian, but even though the presentation is in English, I'll try to quickly cover all the material that I have to present. We have a project between all the regional UN committees. That's UN, CFACT, and then there are four commissions like that, such as SCATO, and CEO, and then CTAD also plays a role in this project. We have a segment in this project which is related to the upgrades of existing and developing new standards for data exchange and information exchange, document exchange in electronic format.
Основана на мультимодальную модель данных Центра ООН по упрощению процедур торговли и электронному бизнесу, СЕФАКТ ООН. Это справочная модель данных, которая должна быть общим знаменателем для обмена информацией. И мы развиваем пилотные проекты. В том числе есть один проект по коридору Гуам между Украиной, Грузией.
Including the Guam corridor between Ukraine and Russia. And then the idea to develop these solutions in Central Asia. This slide shows the key concept. If you have a shipment, a batch of shipment that you're sending via multi-modular corridor, then information should seamlessly, move from one means of transportation to the other, along with the paperwork that's accompanying the cargo. If it was the sea shipment, then it is transshipped and into sea consignment. It is then transshipped to the railway, transshipment consignment or transshipment papers, and then to motor road transportation. And the last group of standards that was developed was for 3 airway bills, the CSD and the cargo. Yes, and if this information, all of this is standardized, then it will be much easier. But the thing is that in order to shift from document exchange to data exchange, and if this all information is standardized, and if they will use all the CFACT UN standard, then it will be automatically be transferred to the state regulating authorities. On this slide, I am showing the groups of documents that have already been made and drawn. There is a variety of such documents, including not the ones purely related to transportation, but there are also invoices, certificates of origin for agricultural produce, phytosanitary safety certificates, and so on. However, on the right side, you can see the main standards. So they list the main standards for different consignments for railway waybills and TSMGS or SMGS for phytosanitary certificate, e-cert, and the last standards on air cargo. So this is one of the products of this project, which professionally deals with digitization of cargo transportation, freight forwarding, and trade. That can see the benefit from enhancing the trade. You can see actually see the data mapping or finding the conformity or coincidence between the different documents that accompany the cargo. And actually from that way, after having found the conformity, coincidences, we made the conclusion based on the CFACT referential data model so that the data could flow seamlessly from one to another. And this model, this matrix actually, in fact, the CFACT forum is taking place at the moment, and it's being discussed that a similar matrix could be done for the declaration of dangerous cargo, which needs to be provided for 5 types of transportation. I mean, provided there is a common set of data, the standard set of data, then we could exchange the information seamlessly. Well, this slide shows how what I call the standards look like. Well, the experts call it the artifacts. This is how these standards are published. The one on the right, you can see for a specific document, and that is CIM SMGS, Railway Consignment Note. While there are similar standards for SMGS that is used in the countries of Central Asia or former Soviet Union, and further in China. The specialists know how this could be used. So whatever is on the right side, if you click on it, if you click on this data set, well, in fact, you can see the structure of data in railway consignment, SMGS railway consignment, and if all of this data in this structure are brought in line with the international standards, so with this reference data model, then they could be referred to or conformed to with the other documents as well. And that way the data can move, so to say, move between different documents. You can see the website of our project in response to the COVID threat to connectivity. And this is the website. And this slide, actually, this slide, the website has our part as well, electronic trade and data. And you can find here the whole package of standards necessary for digitization of multi-modular transportation. So there are these 5 times for which the standards have been developed, and here is the address. That is the URL where you can find the website. Well, actually, the standards are here. The one after another are being adopted by Intergovernmental Bureau of the United Nations Trade Simplification and Electronic Business CFACT. It's also double there. It's copied there as well. If you click on the link, you can find all the links, and I hope the organizers will send or will provide access to our presentation, so you can go and find the CFACT's website and find all the standards that live there. So the ultimate goal or the essence of this is that the unified standards are prepared by the global experts at the UN Center, and this is the organization under the UNESCO, and it has the global mandate, and therefore there are global or international experts who contribute to standard development. So whenever we speak about these standards, about the digitization of multimodal transport standards, they can be used at the regional organization level. I mentioned the data reference model of CFACT on multimodal transport. So in the EU, for instance, so let me give you one example of how regional organizations use these standards. So in the EU, 1 year ago, regulations were adopted, leading to digitization of freight transport. And they have passed, they have accepted as a framework for their future data exchange inside the European Union. Exactly this very data reference model for multimodal transport, the CFACT. And the idea of their regulation is to move from one side to multimodal data exchange, not having different types of transportation, having their own documents and the structure of data, but instead they will have everything in a multimodal way. Everything, they plan for this to be fully in place in 4 years' time. At the same time, they will be shifting from document exchange to data exchange, including through sector organizations who are also using these standards and who use the multimodal data reference models, and the UN organizations. UNSC has 3 types of transport, ICAO on air transport, IMO on maritime transport. And by the way, IMO rules actually in rights are used in the Caspian as well, CIT, OSGD, IRU, that's present here, IATA. So all of them, they all can use and can develop this package of data, and it's approachable. And from there, of course, the traders and the private sector, logistics companies, and the national regulatory agencies are welcome to join the initiative and to use this model. Well, here's one of the examples of using this model we're discussing. And in fact, I do have a meeting with OSJD today. There's an idea of how to organize the single uniform foundation for data exchange to ensure connectivity on railway transportation in Eurasian agents. There is a kind of project, Intertran, connecting Eurasia and China, where data exchange is happening on the basis of an older standard. Again, CFACT standard, ADFACT, and Europe no longer accepts the standard, and they Europe actually prefers standards that use the XML technology. Someone mentioned JSON-FP. And the next step, this will be the next step that will help data exchange with the blockchain support. And of course, there are some legal issues. So the discussions related to legal framework. Cldp spoke about that, and they spoke about the need to develop and to come up with some logistical issues or angle from issues from the legal point of view. So it needs to be worked on. And this is my last slide. We do have a pilot project. Our Ukrainian Belarusian project had a project on export of timberwood from Belarus via railway, inland seaways through Black Sea, and by Kunai to Central Europe. So with that, I would like to complete and finalize my presentation. You can find all of this information and all of the standards by clicking on this link, and also there will be information about this pilot project. With that, I would like to complete my presentation, and now I want to open the floor, or kind of open the Q&A session. Questions for the speakers. Thank you very much. We do have a few questions in the chat, and I would like to ask several questions that have already been posted, and
because the questions were prepared in English. So first came the questions from Turkmenistan, and I'm really glad because receiving questions from Turkmenistan is always very interesting. So First question is, what is the stage of implementing e-tier in Turkmenistan? Do you have plans to introduce e-tier in Turkmenistan? And then from the same person, there is a request to Tamar to provide the protocol of I believe this is a seminar on tier convention in Central Asia, CLPP perspective. First, I would like to say that to tell our colleague from Turkmenistan that it's actually national authorities which implement tier, e-tier, and it's not up to the international actors, including my organization, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, to go and plan and implement, but it's up to the national authorities. And then I would like to ask the participants, the panelists, who would like to take up this? Yes, I see Tatiana Rebele.
Thank you, Mario, and thank you, Turkmenistan, for the question. So first of all, I would like to say that Turkmenistan works with ASICUDA. Custom system is based on ASICUDA. And right now, UNIC has started collaborating with UNCTAD in order to connect all countries which work with ASICUDA to e-tier international system through so-called ASI Hub. Which is kind of data center which collects and then redistributes the data between UNIC e-tier international system and ASICUDA countries. So this is a project which has been started, which is going to bring benefits and to connect ASICUDA countries, tier ASICUDA countries to e-tier international system. Furthermore, I already told you about the projects which have been digital projects which have been started in Central Asia to lay basis for the fastest transition to e-tier. And then Turkmenistan has also the same digital tools already implemented in the custom system, which is tier EPD and real-time safe tier. And in the same way as Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and this month Kyrgyzstan are starting digital projects, digital corridors based on existing connectivity between business to customs, customs to business. Turkmenistan is also welcome to join these projects in order to prepare for the fastest transition to e-tier international system. Thank you.
This answer. Any other, anyone else wants to join in? Next question. Where can one find the studies of USAID which Mr. Max E mentioned? Max, are you there? Yes, please.
Yes, Mario. For this presentation is actually a summary of our detailed findings. Currently now is actually being reviewed by USAID. So I've sent the deck of slides, 10 slides to the organizer that can be disseminated, and perhaps in future, the full report could be uploaded. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next question. To what extent does the creation of free and duty-free zones located in the territory of seaports help connectivity? Daniel, probably you can start answering that question.
Yes, thank you, Mario. Well, I think that these type of centers and initiatives, that they can be great incentives to further digitize and improve connectivity along those routes, because if you really want to attract in the long term manufacturers and other value added participants in these zones, and then they will ask for more favorable transport conditions, both in price and in reliability. So I think in that sense, they can be a catalyst for better connectivity.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Well, I see here there is something which is more of a comment than a question from Mr. Alexei Supiev. I don't figure out where, which exactly country he's from, because he's talking about that the fact that their country will have, Turkmenistan. Okay, so yes, I'm glad to see that you are talking about the single window for export and import clearance. And it would be a joint project by State Customs Service, UNDP, and UNCTAD to pilot the implementation of the single window. I'm very happy to see that you are interested in the single window, because we at UNEC and CFACT have been working for many years. There are 5 recommendations, including recommendation 33, which was mentioned already at this trade forum, on how to establish a single window, then also how to do data harmonization, recommendation 34, and 35 on the legal aspects of it. What is happening in Turkmenistan is that after, well, with the introduction of the Asikuda system for customs, there was an additional project to add to develop a single window, something that happened in Kazakhstan before, and we've been working with the Asikuda team on linking the essentially the system Asikuda, which is essentially for customs clearance, for processing data for customs clearance, to link it to the other regulatory agencies, which is the idea of sharing, automatically sharing information that a business submits to one point on one agency, or one point on the side of the regulatory agencies, to do them in a joint manner. So the idea in Turkmenistan is to develop further the single window, the Asikuda system for customs to become a single window. And again, I would like to come back to the idea that in order to share information among the regulatory agencies between the business entities supplying information to the regulatory agencies and the regulatory agencies, the idea is to use the international ubiquitous standards, mostly the UNCFACT standards and the World Customs Organization standards and ISO, which are, by the way, very much linked on the same basis. Then there is another point made by Mr. Mirzotajuddin Vasidov, who is asking about the free trade zone in Dubai, where they have certain problems. Well, I don't know whether anybody can take this up and comment on problems that they may have with small consignments in the free trade of Dubai, free trade zone of Dubai. I'm not sure we are for such we are ready to make such comments, but if anybody is ready to answer that question. Well, probably that's a bit too concrete private question, and maybe it can be developed further if somebody has more answers to that. But the idea of small items and small site consignments is something that e-commerce has to deal with when the transporters of small packages are dealing directly with customs in order to clear these small consignments. And I would say the answer to this question is further development of e-commerce, including in Dubai and in the Central Asian countries, will probably solve your problems. Tatiana Rebelet, are you asking to respond to this question, or it's an old hand raised?
Yeah, I can just give some comments on this question. We work very closely with the customs of Dubai, and also we work closely with the World Free Zone Organization. And lately we have been discussing with the World Free Zone Organization how we can bring the security elements of TIR to the project for the benefit of the project of secure free zones, which is now carried out by the World Free Zone Organization. So for this particular scenario, we had meetings, in fact, with Dubai traders who send goods to Central Asia, to Afghanistan, who used to send goods to Afghanistan, and they were searching for various routes, how to reach Central Asia from Dubai. I will not, I don't have many comments about export process, but regarding transit process, yes, I can definitely say that TIR will be of value here. How? First of all, for consolidated cargo, the declaration process will be much more facilitated. Because this is exactly where TIR is useful, covering consolidated cargo under one and the same guarantee, regardless of the number of consignments. And secondly, the benefit will be on the port side. For example, when the cargo enters the port of Karachi, for example, or Bandar Abbas, then the procedure at the port for this type of secure cargo will be facilitated thanks to the close coordination between port authorities and customs authorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. And while you are still on the screen, I would like to go to the wrapping up of this session. And I would invite all the panelists for 1 minute to say something. So first, Tatiana, do you have something to add?
Yes, I think we could all see that digitalization of procedures is a hot topic for everyone. What I wanted to say that although it is really crucial and important to support connectivity and economic growth, I would also say that digitalization is a cherry on the cake. The basis should be secured by mutual coordination and cooperation in the region. And thanks to this coordination and cooperation, then border crossing should be facilitated. And of course, digitalization is very important, but everything, there should be a basis formed by mutual cooperation and coordination between all actors and first of all customs authorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we all see that we are looking at multimodal exchange, like you are talking about Dubai, and I don't see any trucks moving directly from, well, maybe there are by ferry between Dubai and Central Asia, but we are looking all at multimodal. Thank you very much. Then Tamar, sorry, you didn't have the possibility to answer questions, but please do now.
Thank you, Mario. Just a clarifying question. There was a question directed to CLDP. Could you please repeat that?
Well, that was a question from Turkmenistan. They were asking, well, I'm citing, they are asking for the protocol of the, I imagine a seminar, TIR Convention in Central Asia, CLDP perspective.
So the, okay.
Or maybe not protocol, but report or something.
Oh, the set of recommendations that were developed. Okay, yeah, I can share that if they'll send me their email or somehow.
Maybe the organizers can help share that with everybody.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Thank you, thank you. And you can put your email on the chats probably so that they can ask that.
Yeah, great
okay.
idea.
Anything else like to wrap up?
I just wanted to emphasize the importance of regionalization in facilitating trade and connectivity in Central Asia, and that regionalization can range from increased intergovernmental, interagency cooperation and public-private cooperation, and how the working groups such as the CLDP's regional customs working group provide a platform for the government officials to come together and coordinate. So, and the broader implementation of the tier convention that has tremendous gains to be had, and in the digital efforts also have benefits during the COVID pandemic that Tatiana has mentioned, the benefits of the tier digitalization. But that's it. I'll be glad to share the presentation and the set of recommendations, and I'll share my email in the chat as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Like we have worked with CLDP on the implementation of the trade facilitation agreement of the WTO. I hope we can also work on this digitalization of multimodal transport as well, because this is something for the future. Thank you very much. Daniel, please.
Yes, just quickly from my side, just to reiterate that it's an incredibly complex problem to connect all stakeholders through digital platforms, which we need to do, and we can only do it together. So I just want to reiterate my support for building something that, you know, is mutually inclusive and incredibly important to unlock the full potential. And let's also not forget, when we talk about green, about really the CO2 footprint, because it will become more and more important in the future. Shippers want to know exactly what the footprint will be. So that's something to keep in mind.
Thank you very much. So next is Max E, please.
Thank you, Mario. I think for the Caspian region, there's a lot of tailwind now. And one of the big problems is actually the information flow. So when we do all the studies, a lot of transport operators, especially from Central Asia, they were asking about the procedures and the workflow going through the seaports, right? And also, I think documentation-wise is more complex compared to an all-land route. And also, maybe there's a misconception that they cannot use TRR. In fact, all our samples were TRR-based, and TRR Convention 1975 allows for multimodal transportation. So I think we need a lot more seminars like this to promote the potential for Central Asia as a land bridge instead of being landlocked region, right, in the future. And thank you very much to the organizers for this event.
Thank you, Max. Well, next would be Larissa, but I just got the message from Larissa Kislякova that she's leaving for another meeting. So she sent her contacts. Larissa, are you still on? No, probably she has left. So next is Vyacheslav Vikentiev.
Да, спасибо. Я буквально в двух словах хотел развить мысль.
Thank you. Just a few words from me about digitalization. That digitalization is an irrevocable part of that is clearly understood objective today, but it shouldn't be an objective in itself for transportation, because it's the reality and the tool that we should use right now, and we should base our work on the needs of the market, and for that we need to be able to understand and look into those needs, and that is the reason why we get together at different forums, including this forum where we are right now. And understanding the needs of the market, we can offer some digital solutions for, in our case, to be able to simplify border crossing, is facilitate road transportations and cargo forwarding. And this is what I was talking about today in my presentation. This is it. Thank you.
This is great, and I would like to wrap up with some general points. Well, first of all, and I'm picking up on what everybody was just saying, digitalization is very important. And I'm repeating the words of a long-time colleague from the Eurasian Economic Commission, actually, who was saying that the COVID has opened a window of opportunity, that people understand that we have to work together and we have to use the same standards for this digitalization. Because, and I'm picking up exactly on what Mr. Vikentiev was just saying, that we are all working, we are all making efforts at digitalization of transport and trade chains. But the point is that there are too many efforts. There is fragmentation in the efforts. So we have to come together, and this is where is our big call to use the same norms like the TIR convention, but let's also remember that in Central Asia, as in the whole region, like from China, all the former Soviet Union to Europe, the main transportation of goods is done by railways. And this will continue because certain calculations are saying that even if it might be a bit more expensive, it is more environmentally and sustainably friendly. So we have to look at this combination, and nothing is simple even in the railway sector. There are different regimes. For example, in Europe and Eurasia, there are two organizations, CIT, OSGD, with different documents, different consignment notes, different regimes, and only bringing them together is a huge task, which will save hundreds of thousands of euros or dollars worth of trade. So we have to look at common solutions in order to solve this basic problem, which is fragmentation. Everybody noted that digitalization, and we have seen that in the COVID, digitalization is advancing. I liked the slide of Max showing that actually some forms of trade have improved during the COVID because people have learned more efficient ways of doing it. Okay, another point which I took from Daniel Cruz's presentation involved the private sector. Like it's very important to do these things like digitalization, simplification, but you have to look at the user. The user has to say what is important. And well, there was one more point by Max Yi. In order to for transit to be more attractive, make prices more attractive. Well, this is a key point as well, not the only one, which is related to the fact that less than 2% of trade between East Asia and Europe is done by land. Everything else is done by sea. And there are many things, including what we are discussing, more efficiency and more kind of safety using digital tools. So this is the end of what I wanted to say. Again, my big request, like for my part of the presentations, look at these international standards for multimodal transport, and let's work together. This is something which we are building now. It's not like the TIR convention, which has existed since the Second World War, and now it's becoming digital, but these are new things on which we can work together and base them on the international standards. So thank you very much. Anybody wanting to say something? Thanks to the organizers for allowing us to have almost half an hour more. But I think it's useful, and we had all these distinguished panelists who contributed on this very interesting topic. The routes connectivity between East Asia and Europe, North Asia and South Asia. We didn't talk much about that, but this is something which is also very important. Anybody wanting to add something?
Thank you very much, Mario, for great moderating.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for organizers.
But thanks to all the panelists for their inspiring words, and I hope we managed to deal even with almost half an hour delay, but we had many speakers. Thank you. I see that the organizers, Mr. Iskakov, is noting that the presentations of this session will be posted on the forum's website later. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. And we can finish this session.
Thanks, everyone.